Hello students. Today we're going to be talking about reading comprehension for nonfiction. That's basically just how to understand a nonfiction text. Specifically, we're going to be looking at what is different about nonfiction, what strategies can I use to help me understand nonfiction, what should I do to answer comprehension questions on a nonfiction text. Alright, so what is different about reading nonfiction? Well, basically, nonfiction means that it is true or really happened in the world. A good way to think about this is that fiction equals fake and nonfiction equals not fake. Pretty simple way of thinking about it. Also, another difference is that nonfiction may be a completely different type of text. So most of what we've read are usually like a fictional short story or maybe a poem. But when we're reading nonfiction, usually we're not actually looking at a story or a poem. Usually we're looking at a completely different type of text. So we might be looking at a historical document, we might be looking at a speech or a letter or article or biography. So it's not always comparing apples with apples there. Sometimes we are looking at a completely different type of text. So you have to just kind of keep that in mind. Another thing is that fiction, usually when you read fiction, there are a lot of hidden elements in it, like foreshadowing, symbolism, or theme. But quite opposite to that, usually nonfiction is pretty straightforward. They don't really have as many hidden meanings. This doesn't say that it never does, but usually nonfiction tends to be a little bit more clear and direct with what it is saying. So now that we've looked at what's different from reading a nonfiction text compared to a fiction text, now we can go ahead and look at what strategies you can actually use to help you understand a piece of nonfiction. Specifically, you can try out these strategies that will hopefully help you understand a nonfiction text a bit better. You can summarize the main points that the author is making. So that's a good first thought of what you can do with a nonfiction text. Another idea is to underline or highlight phrases you think are important. You can reread sections that you were confused about or that you may have zoned out through. We can all do it sometimes where you just zone out while you're reading. No shame in it, just make sure that you go back and reread that. You can try to figure out the meaning of words you don't know in the text and then reread that section. To figure out a word that you don't know, you can try to use some context clues or check if there's a part of the word you might know. You can try substituting that word with a word that you think fits well, or you can just check if the word is already defined for you. Sometimes it's right there on the page. But the point is that you want to figure out the meaning of words you don't know and that you're confused about, and then just reread that section as another way to kind of understand a nonfiction text a little better. You can also ask yourself why the author is saying this, whatever they're saying in the text, kind of trying to figure out what the purpose of this text is, which in turn will kind of help you understand the text as a whole and maybe figure out those sections that are a little more confusing for you. And then lastly, you can try to imagine or draw out what the author is actually describing. This will especially be helpful if you're a visual learner, but I think it will be helpful for any student trying to understand a text a little bit more just by picturing what's going on. Anyway, you can try any of those strategies and hopefully those will help you understand a piece of nonfiction. Alright, the last point of today is to figure out what you can do when you come across a test question that is asking you reading comprehension questions about a nonfiction text. So there's a few points that you want to keep in mind when you do come across these test questions. First of all, you want to remember the main points that the author made, so obviously you should be familiar with those main points and maybe write them out. You also want to make sure you know exactly what the question is asking. Don't be tripped up or confused by any sort of confusing wording. Pay special attention to words like not or all or maybe both or except. You want to pay attention to those words so you know exactly what the question is asking, because if you're confused, you're probably going to pick the wrong answer. Thirdly, you want to check to see which answer is best backed with evidence, so the one that has the most evidence supporting it. And of course, you want to pick the best answer. And of course, as an obvious little reminder here, the second best answer is the wrong answer. So please just remember to be cautious when you come across any test questions and to pick the very best one, the one that's most backed with evidence. Yeah, that is it. Hopefully this is helpful for you for answering test questions on comprehension and understanding nonfiction as a whole.